My ex-husband left me to marry another woman. Before taking his whole family to prepare for the wedding, he sent a text. When we get back, this house won't be yours anymore. I stared at the message, then quietly made my own choice. A few days later, they returned only to find the land. My ex-husband left me to marry another woman. Before taking his whole family to prepare for the wedding, he sent a text. When we get back, this house won't be yours anymore. I stared at the message, then quietly made my own choice. A few days later they returned, only to find the land completely bare. No house, no fence, no sign of anything. Their excitement evaporated. All they could whisper was, "Where did it all go?" I sat in my car, lowered the window, watched their panic and smiled. When Daniel left me, he didn't leave quietly. He packed his suitcases with the self-importance of a man convinced he deserved more, and walked out the door without looking back. A week later, he announced his engagement to Sophia, a woman he had apparently been seeing long before our divorce was even finalized. I wasn't surprised. Betrayal rarely comes alone. It usually brings arrogance with it. But what truly shook me wasn't his leaving. It was the message he sent right before taking his entire family to another state to prepare for the wedding. When we get back, this house won't be yours anymore. Just that. No explanation. No courtesy. Not even the pretense of fairness. I stared at the text for a long minute, my hands steady, my pulse strangely calm. Daniel had always believed that intimidation was a form of communication, and for years I let him think it worked. But this time I made a different choice. The house, my house, stood on a plot of land left to me by my grandmother. Daniel had contributed nothing to its construction except criticism. Still, I knew exactly what his text meant. He had manipulated some legal loophole, likely twisting my earlier trust into paperwork I had signed too quickly. His confidence in his own schemes was almost insulting, as if I hadn't learned anything from a decade beside him. So while he was gone, I hired a crew. Not a demolition crew. Daniel would have expected that. No, I hired structural movers, specialists who could lift an entire house and transport it elsewhere. It cost nearly everything in my savings, but it was legal, clean, and most importantly, poetic. On the morning before they were scheduled to return, the land stood empty. No house, no fence, nothing but bare soil and an unfamiliar stillness. I parked my car down the road and waited, hands wrapped around a lukewarm coffee. Their cars arrived in a small parade of celebration, until the moment they saw the empty lot. Doors flung open. Voices rose. Confusion tangled with panic. Daniel's mother gasped. His brother cursed. And Daniel himself just stood there, staring at the barren ground as if someone had removed his future brick by brick. Then he whispered, barely audible, "Where did it all go?" I lowered my car window slowly, and smiled. The first person to spot me was Claire, Daniel's sister. Her expression shifted from disbelief to accusation within a heartbeat. "Is this your doing?" she demanded, pointing at the empty land like it had personally offended her. I stepped out of the car, placing my sunglasses neatly on the roof. "The land is still here," I said calmly. "Only the house is gone." Daniel stalked toward me, jaw clenched. "You can't do this, Emily. This is illegal." "Actually," I replied, handing him a neatly folded set of documents, "it isn't. The house belongs to me. The land belongs to me. And the paperwork you tricked me into signing only transferred your claim to the land. Claim, not ownership. Since there's no land here for you to take, you're claiming nothing." His face turned red, then pale, then something between the two. He scanned the papers with trembling hands. "You moved the whole house? You said it wouldn't be mine when you got back," I said, shrugging. "So I made sure it wouldn't be here at all." The truth was simpler than the drama implied. I had spent days preparing the move, relocating the house to a new plot of land I purchased under my maiden name. It was tucked safely in a quiet town an hour away. I planned to renovate it, repaint it, and give myself a fresh start, not out of spite but out of liberation. But watching Daniel's fury twist into helplessness, I would be lying if I said it wasn't satisfying. His father stepped forward, calmer but no less angry. "You destroyed our family's plans." "Your plans," I corrected gently. "Not mine." Sophia, dressed far too elegantly for a return trip, stood beside Daniel, clutching his arm. "This is childish," she hissed. "You've ruined everything." I tilted my head. If everything can be ruined by the absence of a house, maybe it wasn't much of a forever to begin with. Silence fell over them. Heavy, bitter, honest. I got back into my car, started the engine, and rolled the window down one last time. "You should talk to your lawyer," I suggested kindly. "He'll explain how loopholes work both ways." Then I drove off, leaving the empty land, and the people who never valued me, behind with the rest of the debris I no longer carried. The drive to my new property felt strangely light, like shedding an old skin. The house, my house, was already being settled onto its new foundation when I arrived. The crew greeted me warmly, proud of their work. Watching the structure lower into place felt like placing a final piece in a long unfinished puzzle. Inside, dust still clung to the furniture and the floors creaked from the move, but it felt more like a fresh chapter than a disruption. I opened all the windows, letting sunlight pour in. For the first time in years, I breathed without tension pressing against my ribs. Over the next few days, I repainted the living room, replaced old curtains, and rearranged the furniture. Every stroke of the brush felt symbolic, not of revenge, but of reclaiming space that had been gradually shrinking under Daniel's shadow. Friends who knew the whole story visited one afternoon, bringing wine and wide-eyed curiosity. "You really moved the whole house?" Jenna asked, still in awe. "Yes," I said, pouring glasses. "Turns out it's easier to relocate a house than to live with someone who thinks they own you." We laughed, and I realized how long it had been since laughter felt natural. I received 3 text messages from Daniel over the next week. The first, angry. The second, pleading. The third, bitter resignation. I didn't reply to any of them. Silence, I discovered, was its own form of closure. One evening, as I sat on the front porch watching the sun sink behind the trees, I thought back to that moment on the empty lot, watching their shock ripple through the air. It wasn't triumph I felt, it was clarity. I had spent so many years believing endurance was a virtue. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away and take everything that belongs to you, including your peace. Now my house sits on a hill overlooking quiet streets. I planted a small garden out front, and every new sprout reminds me that starting over isn't destruction, it's growth. And maybe that's why I chose to share this story. Not to encourage revenge, but to remind anyone reading this that you're allowed to take back your life, even if it means moving the entire foundation of it. If you've ever had a moment when you finally stood up for yourself, or wished you had, tell me. What would you have done in my place?